Bam Pow Comic Hour with your hosts, Andrew Gunner
and Chris Ramos.
Tonight begins our new chapter into the adventures of Bam Pow Comic Hour. This is the Spotlight Writer Series?
The Spotlight, yeah.
Creator Series.
We're going to spotlight a writer, but he's also a creator.
Yeah. And tonight, our featured creator, writer extraordinaire is Cullen Bunn.
Cullen Bunn.
Yes. He's
been around for a while.
He has been around for a while. Some of his earliest work dates back to 2008 in the before time. So
working on Marvel Comics and things like that.
Yep.
But
Oni Press is one of his other go-to publishers for him. It's kind of like a indie publisher within an indie publisher.
And Dark Horse.
So Dark Horse was a big one.
They jump around from, one publisher to the next, which is fun because I bet for a writer that they get to see what one, perk is over the other and what bonus is over the other. And just see how each publisher
from
works.
Looking at his bibliography, he's worked with 7 different publishers.
Wow, yeah.
So he's been around the business. He's a hustler.
Well, he's talented. We liked him a lot. And actually just recently read 2 of his books, and they were just going to kind of bounce back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
We both read them. The first one is Harrow County.
The spooky book.
Yeah, the covers are spooky. But Harrow County has library editions, so of course we were immediately drawn to just that format.
Yeah, we love the library editions from, I think this one's Dark Horse.
Yes, Dark Horse. Yes. And they're still hardcover. They're larger format, but they really have great paper quality, great color saturation, glossy pages. They always have a ribbon in the middle. Yeah,
very ideal for reading.
Yes, and not too huge, so it's not difficult to hold. So that's the first one, Harrow County. There are 4 library editions, and the story of Harrow County started, it ran from 2015 to 2018.
Yeah, 17-18.
Yeah. And then the other one is
The Sixth Gun,
which is awesome.
Which is his own, and these are both his own original series that he came up with. There's no precursor or anything to them. He just created them. And Sixth Gun has, I believe, it was 6 or 7 deluxe editions, which are even taller than a library edition.
What? No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
We're comparing now. Oh, curses!
They're a good they're a good size, and oversized art. Really a pretty book, and I would say that they're definitely worth picking up, and they're both very affordable too.
Yeah, well, you don't have a slipcover. I have a dust jacket.
Right, they did come out with a gun. They called them gunslinger editions. They were the ones with the slip cases and a little more prettier with some extra content in them. Nothing that affects the story or anything, just more extras on behind the scenes work. And those you can't get those anymore.
And back to the affordable ones though. Harrow County cover price is $39.99.
And the Sixth Gun is $60, but you can usually get them for about $40.
Yeah, you can find it. So, and the same deal with Harrow County. You can usually find it at 20 or 40% off, something like that.
Yeah.
With some online distributors.
Yes.
Now, what makes a Cullen Bunn story? Well, so far for these, it's just sort of taking, I felt like he took a pretty common setup. For Harrow County, he sort of based it around just sort of the Salem witch trials, or just maybe sort of the modern day, Charmed or something, I don't know, stories like that are
Southern.
They play
has
on
a
the
Southern
past.
charm to it.
Yep.
With the horror creepiness, and if you ever watch the Wrong Turn horror series, it's kind of like that. It's a little backwoods story. It's a little more supernatural to it, but it has that vibe.
Yeah, and that to me was a little intriguing to say, well, this isn't just the artwork in it, which we'll talk about a little later, feels like it's sort of happy-go-lucky, but then you start realizing really quickly,
no,
this is spooky. It's got a very undertone, kind of creepy, Stephen King-y feel to it or something. I don't know.
It's very eerie. Again, playing on that like southern like horror elements of it. It's very starts slow paced, but that also adds like the creepiness and uncertainty that's going on, and especially when characters just go off the grid a little bit into the creepy
Yeah.
forest. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, like
Well,
super creepy. And it does take a little while to kind of pick up. And then all of a sudden it's like, pow, you're in it. And
yeah,
that was the cool
sucked in.
part. So for Sixth Gun,
Six Gun, there's a great quote in this forward that is,
yeah,
oh
who
yeah,
is the forward on
it
this?
is. It's Indiana Jones. If Indiana Jones never sucked, and that is a great description of the Six Gun.
Maybe the fourth movie.
It
But
all had high points.
who wrote that? That
It
forward?
also was written by Six Gun, and the art was by Brian Hurt. This is more. It was set in the West, but he also has these horror vibes to it. But it's more lighthearted fun with eerie elements scattered throughout it. It kind of plays on like Lock and Key, where there's a variety of different guns that do different things. They're all supernatural. And whoever
six of them.
the six guns.
Guns.
Oh my, we solved it, folks.
We did it. Wait a minute, this is all
Yeah.
making sense now.
But he definitely does with both of these series, the Harrow County and Six Gun. He does a good job to make it his own unique style that stands out from like your Harry Potter or your other supernatural collect 'em all series.
So here's what I picked up from his writing was, number one, he has great pacing. So he
Wonderful
pacing, builds, and then pow, something happens. Build, pow. And it really keeps you
A
going.
lot. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, and it's hard to find a stopping point. Like
Yeah.
that's what I was like, kind
right.
of.
The first issue, you might be
difficult.
like, "Oh, I don't know where this is going." And then once it starts, all the pieces start sliding in together. You can kind of see the story moving ahead. Definitely jumps out and grabs you. I will say that.
Yeah, and the same thing with the artwork, which we'll touch on that. But it was almost like the artwork is so clean and crisp, so you kind of just instantly absorb what's happening in the scene, which is neat because then it focuses on the writing.
Exactly. It doesn't need to explain. The art doesn't need to explain the writing,
Yeah.
or vice versa. It just
And
has to do
sometimes the
action.
art is just like overwhelming a little bit, or it's muddy or lost.
Right.
Or
I do like in
broken.
Six Gun, he still has like the click, pow,
Yeah,
just to give that little like cheesiness to like the West.
Yeah, it almost worked in like it was like a Saturday cartoon or something like
Yeah,
that.
just a little more serious and a little more creepy to it.
Sometimes the backgrounds just drop away altogether.
Right.
But both of these have a very strong female lead.
Yeah.
Both of them are written exactly in that time period, and you don't really have a feeling that it's
This is
jumping
more
away.
like Civil War, post-Civil War feel to it. It's like an old general from the South. He's trying to rise up, but he's like a zombie that got killed once, or he's like immortal or something. You kind of figure out all the pieces as it goes together. And then there's like a bounty hunter that, kind of has to hunt down these guns. He used to be at work for him. You kind of follow his story with this other supporting female character, and they go off and try to stop this evil guy, and it's really interesting.
She's the guide for us. I mean, she's the
Yeah,
one who
she's the
doesn't know
reader.
what's happening.
Yep.
She's the reader. So she sort of just is stumbling through the storyline.
Right.
And you get the idea that everyone else in the story has been doing their part for a long, long
Sure.
time, right?
I definitely
And-
think Clint Eastwood movies, like what was it, the seven? It's not some of his Western movies that
Yeah.
is in. Yeah, or the
Picks up
seven
on a lot of
ones.
those.
Yeah,
Well, the other cool thing is that without giving them away, but each gun does something different.
Yeah.
So there's guns of power, which is really kind of fun. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
there's guns of power.
which is a little cliche, but still like it totally fits the tone and the vibe. And they're like, it's similar to Lock and Key, where yes, they're very important to getting them to understanding them, but it also makes a very interesting plot points. to it.
And the other part I liked about his writing in The Sixth Gun was there were chapters, of course, through the book, so you feel like, okay, this is, issues, or these are stopping points, I guess. But they also like started a storyline, and then they kind of wrapped it up, and then they started another storyline, and then wrapped it up. So it was rewarding in that sense, because I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before that I like when stories just sort of have an ending point. Like they have a moment where you're like, whoa, that all paid off. I mean, it's just, you
Yeah.
have to. You
Oh,
have to.
absolutely. I think, yeah. Especially for this edition, this deluxe edition, the moment you start the story and you get to the end of the volume, this volume, which is it's got 11 issues. As soon as you get to that 11th issue, like it's all already full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's six
Yes, they
more
set it
after
up
this.
to lead on to the next volume. They give you some plot threads to do that, but at least it gives you a kind of a satisfying wrap up of the volume.
Yeah. So Sixth Gun, definitely. I mean, I want to see where the rest of the story goes.
We
only
both
read
do.
the one volume.
It's really good.
It and the spines all match up on the shelf.
Yep.
So that's cool too.
Yep. I think, yeah, Harrow County might do the same, but it always looks good when, they have their collected editions working in order. They're not random. They have it planned out.
And
Looks
that's
nice on a shelf.
Has he finished with that, or is it, I don't know. If it's, you always think they'll go back to it anyway.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I think so. The last volume of Sixth Gun, the deluxe edition, came out in October of 2019.
Oh,
Whether
wow.
it wrapped up the series, I'm not sure.
Well,
But
you'll just have to go buy the series then, so we can both read
it.
it.
Yes,
I'm putting that on you.
Me and Ray most agreed that I will collect all the Sixth Gun volumes, and he will get all the Harrow County volumes.
Yeah,
and then we will trade. Because trying to afford both of them, if you can, good on you. We don't have the shelf space.
We'll pick their favorites. And that's a good lead in. We picked our favorites. Now, Harrow County, I mean, right away, it looks like just an art book. I mean, it really is. The artwork is stellar.
Absolutely.
And when you look up Mr. Cook, his website is mrcook.com. But Tyler Crook, mrcrook.com. Tyler Crook, he hand painted all of these pages, watercolor.
Wow.
And
yeah, that's right.
It's crazy amazing when you look through it.
I know that one, they're going into like spin-offs for that now. It's like Tales from Harrow County.
Yeah, I mean, they made their own world, and they made their own time frame, and they brought their own characters that actually are like pretty well, I mean, multi-layered characters.
The only thing I'll say, this I mean, they both have great book universes, but I think this one sets itself up to grow bigger.
Harrow County.
Yeah, there's more room to breathe and bring in other townsfolk into it and explore the horror creepy crawlies in that one.
Well, so, not to keep bouncing back and forth, but like Sixth Gun, you got the idea right away that there was an entire world out there of many like side characters and side quests and side,
it feels like a D&D adventure where you can go on a billion side quests.
It's just like it's everyone. Oh, now we have to go this way, and we're gonna travel through this treasure pot or whatever. Where Harrow County is sort of that hyper focused tiny little town.
Yeah, you think so? Okay.
Well, you get the idea that a lot of this is happening right in this town.
Sure, I suppose.
It's like the nexus of evil is here.
Right.
Where like
this could go anywhere.
Yeah, in Sixth Gun, it's just like in general there is.
I guess that is true. Harrow County does have more of it's like the spooky small town.
Yeah.
That like small one-horse town that they're living in.
And you always kind of think like, okay, so you compare it to things like Lord of the Rings or other quick things. There is a just general evil in the entire world. And with Sixth Gun, there's general evil that's always tied to these guns, and wherever they go, they just sort of are there with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Harrow County, it's like there is evil in sort of this like Freddy Krueger kind of way of like past grievances and
Yeah.
like sins of the father kind of
Sure.
traveling through to the next person. So
Yeah.
that that is where I think Harrow County would go, is some wrong happened and these people, like these, I don't know, let's say
Individuals got
10
affected, but
people, they're
yeah.
affected.
Cool.
Where,
Okay.
if they jumped to Nebraska, no
Yeah.
one would know what this story is about. So,
Sure.
I think that's what that is like there is this circle of trust
Yeah.
and trust and tragedy.
Regardless, regardless of how big or small these universes are, he does a great job of building these.
Yeah, like I
Very well
sometimes you
thought
get the
out.
idea that well, sometimes you get a feeling that a writer sort of pulls from one book to the next to the next to the next, and you kind of pick up on something. He's like, oh, this is similar to his last thing, where these feel like they're really separate. Like he put himself in this spot and said, if I was, wielding a magical gun and running, how would I do that? And that's the other thing about Six Gun, is that I'm a somewhat of a critical reader, where I feel like if a character acts out of place, or if something just sort of falls into your lap, like when they're like, "Oh, we wish we had a clue," and then like, "Oh, what's this on the table?" And it's like, "There's a clue." Um, they kind of acted and reacted how I thought that they would. Like he writes
Yeah.
the characters really, really well in that aspect.
Hmm.
When people are trying to prove themselves, or be the hero, they do. And
Yeah. They
when
don't act out a character
yeah,
that
like
much.
if someone's a big, wimp and
Yeah.
something's happening, they run, and it's
Or
like,
yeah, or if they're like the war hero and you're cheering them on and they might have a setback and you care about that character. Or like
mhm.
even though he's maybe not the main character, he's a great supporting character and you're like, I want to see him do more. And then they find a creative way to bring him back.
Yeah, and a lot of times there's other, like it feels like mystical, like the page you got is like some sort of mystical creatures appear, and you're like, wow, so this world has lots of weirdo stuff going on,
Yeah.
and that's cool too. That just when you think, oh, this feels like a pretty standard Tombstone story, it pulls you
Yep.
out. It's like, oh, that's not
And then
actually like that.
zombies appear.
Yeah, and zombies, and you never. I don't know. It's like when I was reading it,
Yeah.
even my wife was like, "Well, I don't. It's like a western, and like I don't like read westerns. I don't
No.
consider myself a western
Western,
novel
yeah,
reader.
or even a big movie watcher.
Yeah.
No.
So
Yeah.
then, while you're reading it, you're like, "This is cool. There's zombies and creatures and magic and like
Yeah.
uh not like their version of like Nazi voodoo stuff, but like weirdo stuff like that, which is kind of I don't know.
I
It's
figured out what movie I was trying
cool.
to think of, the Good, Bad, and the Ugly by
Oh yeah,
Clint
yeah, yeah.
Eastwood.
Sure.
I was like, that's it.
Right there. So with Harrow County, you start out actually, like we've talked about, where you feel like there's this tiny little city that has some um, curses on it, and you kind of start figuring out that whatever the curse was something that happened long ago, kind of like Salem witch trial kind of stuff, and then for some reason it has now surfaced once again, and there's little scenes and little pockets through the story where you think, all right, this is kind of weird and creepy, something's going on, so then you start reading it and you're always wondering, like, what is this character for, and like where is this now going, just like when you're watching a movie and there's just this constant suspense build up and you just think, you're being too loud, or like too many people are like around you, and like you're gonna get found, you're gonna get caught. And that to me was a really great experience reading a comic, is to you know get yourself in that story and just get involved.
Sure. And I
um
guess like a question that I have for you, a little off topic, but sort of not. Um, were you a big like horror movie buff or watcher before we started reading horror comics?
well, I guess the easy answer to that is, in the 80s and early 90s, everyone was it's somehow involved with horror movies. It was like a big flux back then. It was like, you know, Jason and Freddy Krueger and all of those like poltergeists and things like that was just sort of like
Yeah.
a big genre trope thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so oh, I watched a lot of those and I was aware of those. And then I started reading books like Stephen King and things. And so I have a good respect for horror.
Okay.
I'd say in the last 5-10 years, no, I'm not really like searching out horror movies
Right.
because some of them, quite frankly, have become just like gory hack slash instead of like really good suspense.
Or the psychological horror.
Yeah,
Like Mothman Mysteries was the one that was got me.
or The Sixth Sense. You know,
Yeah.
like that was a really suspenseful, good movie. When that came out,
Mhm.
people were just like blown away, like,
Yep.
whoa,
Mhm.
and that's, I guess, the kind of, I guess if you say horror,
Yeah.
that's the kind of suspense that I like. I like that where there's always like a trick or there's always like a reason or something.
Sure.
But some people would say like Alien or Aliens movies are horror.
Yeah.
And I think that's just
Well, that's
the
like sci-fi horror.
Yeah,
That's its own
right.
classification.
And
yeah.
that's the suspense part of it. That's
yeah,
like
that pays it off.
you are not in the world that you know, and you're not in the environment that you know.
Yeah.
So now you are like freaked out that something's going to happen because you're not familiar with that world. But there's always that idea that I've said it in the past, I think with my kids and things, is when you see like CG monsters or you see like dragons and things or like griffins or any kind of mystical creatures, you don't think that those are as scary. That's why like Harry Potter movies are not quite as scary because they realize that this is a different world, right? But like movies like The Sixth Sense or even like War of the Worlds and stuff like that, it's like our world.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like going from high fantasy to low fantasy. I mean,
Sure.
high fantasy is there's its own world that's made up and that's what it is. It's totally different. And like Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And then low fantasy is our world with magical elements in it. And so
exactly.
it's like Harry Potter is our world.
Yeah. And then to reel it back into here.
Yeah, to Harrow County, this feels like our world.
Yeah.
So then it's like creepy. It's even creepier.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, every character that pops up, you're like, what's his angle? What's he doing? How'd he know that was going on? And you get the idea that this whole city has a big secret that's being kept, which is like a Freddy Krueger thing. Like, there's
this is what we did to Freddy last
year.
year.
Like the whole city has a secret.
We burned him.
And that was like the adults are like, no. So it kind of has some of those things coming back where like Sixth Gun is its own world and its own time frame. And that's the other thing when you take it way beyond our time frame.
Yeah, when you go like way into the past. Not super in the past, but like even Civil War era.
Yeah, I guess and that's a good way to think about it too. Like if you were reading a story and it took place in the 50s or 60s, that's in the past enough where you're like, oh, okay. But if you were reading it and it took place in like the 1700s, that kind of dilutes it a little bit, I think. Or you maybe don't see it as that scary.
Sure.
So that's my rant on scary things.
Thanks. But Cullen Bunn's really good. He's a big up and coming writer. Even if you consider it up and coming, like he's doing so much these days, and he's always looking to expand his horizons, try something new. Definitely always keeps writing. Promotes himself really well, especially for the new. He comes in like the new age of like really big, cool writers that are coming out these days too.
And I think he's also coming in an age where these indie companies, these side companies, like Oni Press, I mean, that's kind of building its name out there. Mm-hmm. And Dark Horse has been really great with just creator-owned series and creator-owned just abilities to have your comic as you, and this is your story and your idea.
Yeah.
So
they're respecting the writer more.
Yeah.
And the creator more.
So then, they have to pair themselves up with a really good artist. And maybe
Yeah.
we start with Six Gun a little bit. Now, the art for that, like we had said, I think
By
it's
Brian Hurt.
all, yeah, Brian, what?
Brian Hurt.
Yeah. I think it's all digital, which is fine. Um, I,
The lighting's really good.
yeah, there are moments where digital artwork feels like rushed a little bit sometimes, but like this one has a style that's
It's
held
definitely
on.
you
the
definitely
whole
feel like
time.
you're in a movie.
Yeah, like it finally carries through.
The panning and the angles and the different layout of the paneling is really well done. It's very cinematic looking, and you definitely get sucked into the world and definitely you get attached to these characters.
Yeah, I mean each page usually has about 7 or 8 panels.
Yeah,
And
especially in the oversized and this deluxe edition.
it moves the story really fast. When you have that.
Yes, absolutely.
But the other cool thing about his artwork is that we go back to kind of what was the art that we had before that was really detailed? Oh, Lock and Key.
Yes.
But this one, everything is outlined in black or, just really, really, hyper in focus.
Right.
It's just
It's very
there's that.
detailed art too.
Yeah. And
There's some great backgrounds and close-up shots.
he holds true to the characters too. I always look at that, like if a character pops up, 10 issues later, like would you be able to recognize them? And I think even though he has a lot of people, he really does draw like a lot of people in this comic. But even though he has a lot of people, he's still the main characters. They have their own unique like things. Like our one main guy, he always has that bowler cap on.
Yeah. And
It's always his thing. It's like maybe that's the Indiana Jones tie,
right? Yeah, yeah.
And the girl, same thing. Good expressions. Really, really kind of like vibrant art. Even though the paper in that is not glossy.
No, it's like a matte paper.
Yeah, it's fine.
But I think if it was glossy, I wouldn't like it as much.
Well, that's true. It kind of has that sort of.
It lays the color down more flat.
Yeah, has like an old school comic.
Yeah, which definitely fits the tone and everything and the layout of this book.
And all of the text, is digitally laid in, of course, and all that. So that, I mean, Six Gun, awesome.
We definitely look forward to reading more of that.
Harrow County. So the artwork on this one, I don't know. Even reading through it, I was like pretty blown away of like, Tyler's art is crazy.
Because watercolor, you said it's not really done too much anymore. It's still like kind of not a hard art style, but it definitely takes
it's time consuming.
Okay.
And that's the thing too. Way back in the day, artists, inkers, pencilers, colors, they were all paid per page. So when you were a penciler, you had to pretty much figure out the layout that goes along with the text, get your layout done, get your pencils to the point where someone else could see them and understand what you're doing. So you can't just be like blob shape, that's Captain America. And, some people actually, I've been shocked when you look at original artwork that the penciler left so much to be interpreted by their inker.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
It really is surprising sometimes where you're like, geez. But there are some pencilers like Todd McFarlane who are super detailed. So then sometimes they don't like their inkers. So then they just end up inking it themselves.
Yeah, I think Bill Sienkiewicz is like.
Yeah, so it's
when he was doing like New Mutants, like Bob McCloud had.
Well, like Jim Lee has like an inker that he loves to use all the time. Yeah. And that's because Jim Lee does a lot of little tiny random slashes and hash marks all over the place. And some artists just do that. It's just like how they draw. Yeah. And they're always doing like little, I don't know what to call it, random cross hatching, I guess. And if you don't have the right inker, they just sort of blob over what you're doing. And so then they're like, yeah, that's a shadow. And they just blob it over. Mm-hmm. But they really wanted it to be a very fine little line. So anyway, with this Harrow County, I can't believe, I mean, some of this all original watercolor, and you can see you can go to his page and you can see videos of him actually painting these pages at Harrow
That's
County.
cool.
He does little tutorials, little demos. They're all like time lapse, but it's amazing to see that come together where he picks like a focal point for the light and then just starts filling in all the darks and coming back to it, because almost every image has some sort of dis like really distinguished light source. Like that's his thing.
And I think without him doing these watercolor paneling and designs and things like that, I don't think Harrow County would be the book. I mean, yeah, Cullen Bunn, that's our spotlight writer, and he writes it really well. But I think this just puts it above a new level of like horror books.
Well, I mean, I think what it does is it saves this book from that sort of random flip through that everyone does.
Yeah.
They grab a comic and they're like, oh, let's check this out. And they just flip through like 10, 12 pages. As soon as you open this, I'm not kidding, you're like, whoa. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
The artwork too. And so I think that just kind of brings us into sort of the next level of, this is definitely something you could tell that they put their passion into, that they really put their attention on. And every page, as far as like the layout and the progression through the story, really well thought out. Just really, really a great story. So I am also looking forward to reading all 4 of these in the series.
Yeah. So we definitely recommend reading more Cullen Bunn stories. He has a lot of them out there. He's worked for, again, 7 different publishers, and he's got a lot out there. So definitely try it and go find a Cullen Bunn book. We definitely recommend him. Can't go wrong. He does a lot of like Deadpool. He did Captain America for a little bit. He did Venom. He had a big run on that. As well as other lots of indie titles and self-published work and things like that you can definitely support and get into and find like a unique series that you love and appreciate just as much as we do with Harrow County and Six Gun. So, yeah.
Definitely.
This is the Creator Spotlight series, wrapping up on Bam Pow Comic Hour. This is your host, Andrew Gliner.
And Chris Ramos. Thank you.
Signing off.
Bye-bye.